Module 7. Assessing and Evaluating Children's Learning. Assessing and evaluating children's learning involves the process of gathering information about a child's knowledge, skills, and understanding in a particular subject or area. Assessment involves gathering data through a variety of methods, such as observing the child, examining their work, and conducting tests or quizzes. Considerations for effective assessment. The main goal is to help you learn better, so your teachers need to pick the right things to test you on. They also need to be good at grading fairly and not letting their own opinions affect the results. Your teachers will think about how you're feeling physically and emotionally, and make sure you're in a good place for the test or assignment. They'll also choose a good time to give you the test or assignment when you're ready and able to do your best. Your teachers will use different tools and strategies to help assess you, but they'll make sure to use the ones that work best for you. And when they get the results, they'll use them to help you learn better in the future. Standardized testing problems. One issue is that a lot is riding on just one test, which can make it very stressful. Another problem is making sure that the material being tested matches up with where a student is at in their development. We've also seen an increase in the use of standardized testing over the years, which can be a concern. Plus, these tests have some weaknesses and limitations that we need to be aware of. On the other hand, they can still be helpful for research and diagnostic purposes. Characteristics of authentic or alternative assessment. These types of assessments are pretty interesting because they take a different approach to evaluating your knowledge and skills. Here are some things that make them unique. To begin, they use a variety of data points over time to assess your progress, which means they look at your performance on different tasks and assignments throughout a period. They test all domains, which means they look at how well you're doing in all areas of the subject, not just one or two. They're conducted in a learning setting, which means you're being evaluated in the same environment where you're learning. They're related to the curriculum, which means they're based on the things you're supposed to be learning in class. They're based on your best performance, which means they focus on what you can do well instead of what you can't. They're useful for instruction, which means they help teachers figure out how to help you learn better. And lastly, they share responsibility among different people, like the teacher, child, parents, and other professionals. This means everyone works together to help you learn and grow. Strategies for authentic assessment. So, when it comes to figuring out how well a student is doing, there are a lot of different strategies that teachers can use. First off, there's something called screening and readiness procedures. That just means that when a new student comes into the class, the teacher will do some tests to see where they're at in terms of their learning. Then there are structured and non-structured observations. This means that teachers will watch students while they're doing different activities to see how they're doing. Another strategy is using anecdotal records and notation. That just means that teachers will make notes about things that students do, both good and bad. Teachers might also use something called frequency counts. This is just a fancy way of saying that they'll keep track of how many times a student does a certain behavior. There's also something called sociograms, which is just a way of keeping track of which students are friends with each other. Rating scales and rubrics are another strategy. These are just checklists that teachers use to keep track of how well students are doing in different areas. Participation charts are useful for keeping track of where a student is during the day. Oral reading tests are tests where students read out loud and the teacher keeps track of how well they're doing. Teachers might also have one-on-one meetings with students, called mini-conferences, to talk about how the student is doing in a particular area. Another strategy is using something called an eco-map. This is another fancy way of saying that teachers will draw a picture to show all the different things that are going on in a student's life, like their family and community. Finally, there's child self-appraisal. This is when students evaluate their progress and talk about how they're doing. Types of portfolios. A portfolio is a collection of a child's work over a period of time. There are different types of portfolios, so let me go through them with you. First off, there's something called an individual portfolio. This is kept in the classroom and you and your teacher will decide what work you want to include in it. You'll also pick out some pieces to put in your showcase portfolio, which is a collection of your best work. Your teacher will also keep a separate folder called a teacher portfolio. This will have copies of your work, your teacher's notes, and other information about your academic and personal growth. There's also something called an institutional portfolio. This is a collection of your work that's kept from year to year, so you can see how you're progressing over time. Finally, there's an electronic portfolio. This is becoming more common as technology improves. You can use things like PowerPoint, web pages, and videos to show off your work. But there are ethical issues to consider when it comes to sharing personal information online. Benefits of observational assessment. Observational assessment is when we, the teachers, watch children during different activities in different places to learn more about them. One of the benefits of this is that it is not intrusive, that is, it doesn't interrupt their normal routine or make them uncomfortable. Plus, teachers can get really helpful information right away to help us interact with and teach them better. We can even use what we learn to come up with ideas to investigate further. Another great thing about it is that we can do it anywhere, so we can learn about children in all sorts of different settings. And the best part is, it gives us teachers a more personal understanding of each child.